DigiAna Group conversation Salon video. Today we're gonna talk about the randomness and structuralism. It's my idea. My name is Seungjin Lee. I'm a DigiAna Group organizer, and from last month, the June 20? Mid-June. From mid-June, we collaboration to the Mike, the artist named Night Shining, the solo show to here his first time the physical artwork distribution in DigiAna Studio, first time. Then when I see his artworks, there's a lot of the algorithm made by the digital programming, but it makes the real looks like a pure natural randomness, and combined with the silicons and looks like live things materials, and for example BioMorphologies. And here it's a new format about the live things. So, and other works also almost same concept they can't have. And when I see these works, just I have an idea about yes, let's do randomness and structuralism and today. So anyway, I will do a presentation for 5 to 10 minutes. Oh, by the way, I forgot to introduce you guys. Could you introduce by yourself?
I'm Tommy Mintz. I'm an artist and photographer. I had an exhibition, actually the first exhibition here. Thank you, Seungjin, at DigiAna Studio.
Hi, I'm M.Romeo. My pseudonym for all my art and music performance is Night Shining, and Seungjin was nice enough to invite me this past month until the final day today to present multimedia works between 2020 until present time.
And I'm Cameron Alexander. I go by Empty Flash on the internet, and I'm a live coder and generative artist as well as photographer.
So, yeah, why this topic? By searching Mike's artwork, whole concept is using algorithm and combining life form materials and trying to think about new types of organism and I also digital algorithm combination. I think this format explains also that nowadays people shape and looks and future people shape or some coming our society phenomenon. And seeing the randomness, it means usually people say, it can say difficult to expect what is the next happen, the phenomenon or result is come, it means the randomness. So it's more AI technology can make upgrade version every day, more pure randomness system, like a real natural system, because they search about from internet searching algorithm that choose data from the people's movement and searching result on the internet. So it means more digital technology. It looks like more live thing, and but people looks more. These people looks more less live thing, and they don't looks no activities in society. I think so. Structuralism is told us most modernist explained for nowadays society. So it is by some people's opinion, not everyone's society, professional society opinion. And what is the structuralism? Is the social science philosophy, and give me a second. I'm gonna read this one. Structuralism is told us most modernized explained for nowadays society different from past mentioned modernism structure based on rationalism, emphasized by Hegel, Friedrich Hegel. Is it Friedrich Hegel, right? And existentialism sustained by Jean-Paul Sartre, right? Sartre, yeah. But by searching Claude Lévi-Strauss, who searched many tribes, not construct-based society civilization based on the science, like philosophy, and he noticed they have common rule about like forbid incest by natural way. It's not from the Bible, not people's like society constructs of mind. So it means like our society is basic rule is come from the already exist nature like program system. It's so different about the past our modernism, like thinking about system, like people can make a future, science is gonna be like God is good, like it's the different thing. So yeah, so that's why I put this topic in today. You know, let's see what is the randomness, like more growing digital technology, like looks like thing, and the structuralism, like looks like nowadays people like putting the already programmed like society. So, for example, people don't want to be a people. Like this means nowadays people don't want to be a past modernism people. Like, for example, like I search like Drew, like I saw one YouTube video. Like nowadays, so many young people in the USA, they use this mimic image about the tumor. Like this tumor meaning they don't have like some kind of passion or some kind of energy or some kind of future or like like dream. They don't have basically. And this kind of people is saying tumor, and people say it's almost almost like Gen generation,
Gen Z.
Gen Z generation is like born from like 95 to like 2000.
I can see that.
Yeah. And it's not only this kind of like less energy people is growing up in society. It's not only USA. It's also the already developed countries. So many countries like same phenomenon is of course. For example, do you guys hear of Tamping? Tamping is the China right now. So many people, young people, the new society movement. So Tamping is mean, I don't know. Tamping is a Chinese slang that describe a person's rejection of society pressures to overwork and overactive, such as in the 9 to 9-6 working. They work until like from like 9 to like they crazy work like Korea, which is often regarded as a rat race with ever diminishing returns. Those who participate in tamping instead choose to lie down flat and get over the beating by a low desire, more indifferent attitude toward life. So they just stop in their house or just lay down in the subway, on the like street, and these people say it's like thousands, millions of people they like, especially young people in China. And even in Japan, there is a new job about the job of nothing to do. So even they make a like some kind of like the movie series or drama series about this like job. So
what's the difference between tamping and
tamping is just really nothing to do. But this in Japan's phenomenon is this name is job. Job name is nothing. So what they do is just this means a renter, nothing to do people. So renter system. So you can pay him like money, like hourly payment, and he just came and just nothing to do, just sit down. There is a job over him. Yeah. So and even in Korea, like so many people they don't want to be like married, they don't want to do or make a love with other people. So some people do the wedding ceremony. Like so bring only friends, not parents, because parents is past modernism, like philosophy they have. So they do in the ceremony just say to people, I'm gonna never do marry, just marry with me, that kind of ceremony. Like in Korea, people do like so many people like that. So as you can see, that phenomenon is like a lot of like different countries, like especially young like people, is more or less, you know, like physically and not more or less like energy take life like nowadays. So and the creation and imagination compressed by AI, this is really simple topic, you know. As you can see a lot of in YouTube video, so many people talk about AI is gonna take over about like people's creation a lot of like work. For example, Hollywood writers strike, as you know, like ChatGPT is gonna take a, you know, and even like AI made game, like, you know, like you can make a scenario from the ChatGPT and make a like image from the, what is that, the AI generation like image machine, and like combine together and they make a really good novel about the like novel game. And have you ever heard about the Babel canvas or Babel or like library? So this is Babel of canvas. This is a website. So they say in this screen they're gonna put like randomly the several different colors, just randomly, like whole, like eternal. So it means, and they say it's gonna be whole every artwork in this world and the future hour in this world. So it means, you know, it's a kind of like irony still, you know. It's just, you know.
If they're saying that that's like every
every
piece of art that
yeah,
is made and every piece of art that will be made in one pixel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That kind of concept. And even other people made the like bubble of library. They make like 3D some kind of model, like huge like library building, and they have like huge like books, and that inside book writing also made by the like just randomly algorithm like writing. But people say it's gonna be maybe the Shakespeare's novel.
1,000 monkeys, 1,000
Yeah.
typewriters for
Yeah.
1,000 years.
Yeah, there's 1,000 years. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So they kind of actually, and even in Japan, they recently made AI talent agency. So their talent agency, everything is AI driven, and you know, not real human. They're gonna do like a live stream, like YouTube performance, like kind of. So it's mean, you know, like even people's creation mind is like by over the AI system, like as you can see. Almost every day we see this kind of new type of school. And last topic, remove physical connect by digitalization. It's like, you know, like this kind of topic is already a lot of like movies and games and novels already people like explained in the past. Like I'm just showing you like example, you know, matrix human like battery. You know, like in the future, like human is just exists for the battery system for the machines, you know, for working. And have you ever seen the Netflix Alien Wars? Alien Wars is the professional like scientists like the other, and they talk about what is the other planet like shapes or the future in the other planets gonna looks like, and remake about the 3D animation. And Sean named the stars named the Terra, and Terra is every like human shape, like the aliens, they just throw away their body system, like this, your words. They just throw away body system and they connect with the cable with each other. And they can read each other's in the mind and brain system. So they just throw away about the personality, they just more, you know, like communicate each other. Yeah, they only care, but they work in the like solar system by the sun. But sometimes like their like solar system is broken by the like atmosphere like changing. So they gonna like trying to robot to like helping about their like changing the programming there. But anyway, that kind of like really
Never heard of
interesting.
this. That's so interesting.
Yeah.
So
And
many yes.
do you know Rain?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I know the anime series. I didn't know there was a.
Yeah, and even
PS1 game. Okay.
yeah. Also, you know, like, have you ever played Rain? Rain is 1998 PS1. It's kind of, what is that? Anyway, not major game. It's the more underground game, basically. And what it's talking about is there's a like young lady in Japan, and she like one day she got a computer, and she like just crazy about the internet, and she suddenly like little bit like she changed her mind, and maybe I don't need my body system anymore because I want to connect in the internet system. And in the last game, she do a suicide like herself. But her in the real life, her like faces looks like depressed and sad. But when she dead and go in the like internet system like this, and first time she gonna smile. Like it's like people say really depressed and like really sad game like. But anyway, I love this game anyway. So yeah, just conclusion is like for just eyes like show like given examples, as you can see like just nowadays it's more like digitalization is more like activities lives going, and human is more depressed, really, you know, like not activate. But I can see like from this time to Mike's exhibition and like explain like this kind of the artworks of nowadays people's like phenomenon, we can enjoy about the now ourselves, what is ourselves and what is the good balance with the like digital technology and ourselves. So it is why I choose this time around. This time. Thank you so much for this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Really interesting stuff
for sure.
Yeah.
Kind of. Have you ever seen Evangelion?
Of course.
That kind of fits into that whole like wanting to, I guess spoilers for the show, but wanting to kind of like merge and become one. It's less like technology doing it. I guess it's kind of technology, but like the idea of like the primordial soup just returning to that and being like one and like kind of destroying the illusion of self and just like kind of
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that kind of ties into like most of this is just kind of the depression and defeatism that comes out of things that are happening is very like tied to capitalism for the most part, and like hyper individualism, and like there's a desire to have that kind of like collectivism. But I think we tend to like think about merging with technology as a way of achieving that, which is maybe good, maybe bad. Like it's kind of like a balancing act.
Yeah, really needed. Even like so when I see first time the Evangelion, is the like I just think, oh, this is really like Japanese national, like more like what is that? The like nationalism like philosophy, like
it's
it's
like
for Shinto.
authoritarian, like people don't get a choice.
Yeah, because in animation, so many like Christianism like symbols over there, like Jesus, even angels, like. But it's basically like anti-Christianism in the animation.
Yeah,
so
the bad guys. Right?
Yeah, so it means like anti like westernized system and even anti like capitalism system, like also like just one little Japanese boy like control the huge robot and fight. Even he don't know about why I fight and what is my future like. But basically he just like philosophies come from like just I think like Japanese people like deep in society is just like connect even though like just basic natural already programming system in the world is like kind of connected. Shinto, I think,
Yeah, and it's kind of like the big reveal is that like the solution to this problem was like a hyper collectivism where everybody becomes joined and you kind of lose that, and that also seems scary. It's like feels like one or the other but I feel like the thing that we miss a lot in these conversations is that there's probably a balance, like a beautiful like balancing act of back and forth between these things. Like, I think especially in like Western society, what we're missing a lot is like that sense of community, like interacting with people, and so we tend to make things that are like, let's use these new technologies to do it and to make that sense of community or whatever, like social media and stuff, but they end up being like co-opted by these extractive ideas of like monopolizing your attention, and that's kind of like what always happens under capitalism. Kind of hard to avoid it.
Yeah. So I think like from now, even now and future is more ourselves and our like like next generation. They need to more think about everyday how to survive, what is the good balance with new technology.
Yeah.
So
I feel like it always is just like yin and yang. Like
yeah.
there are good parts to it, there are bad parts to it.
Yeah.
Like we have to decide which ones are good and which ones are bad, and for each for ourselves, and kind of like have a diaspora of ideas to share.
I think that's why we still doing like creation things. Just I don't know the answer about like even myself and like what is the good like decision about the human's life or something. So that's why I'm just throwing question to people.
Well, I like that lay down movement, that sort of idea of opting out of both consumption and production and the environmental effects that come with that sort of lifestyle, which we now see the effect of. Capitalism, as you say, has reached maybe an apex where we're sort of having to pay the past bill, like sort of dumping carbon or whatever, and thinking it's free forever. But now we can't. And what do? Do we still use technology? Sure. But maybe it's in a way that's not as devastating environmental. And I think like physical human connection is always a thing. You always have to get somewhere, but like making the decision on like how to get places. I've become like more evangelical bicyclist. Bicyclism, might be a religion, or whatever that I like. Road trip edition or something like that. It's sort of like we've had this, capitalism, sort of religious fervor of like consumption and the images that feed that, right? Is sort of a mental sort of system we've been trained in. If you think about like religions in the past, there's mental systems that you sort of structure your life around. How do you approach each day? How do you, just think about yourself in relation to others? And so now that we've reached this maybe flexure, or where capitalism is no longer offering us, and the answer, all it offers us is this apocalypse, of environmental devastation. But there are other, as I said, answers in other cultures that can be looked to, both past and present, right? That have had sort of different environmental impact in their technological practices. Really, if you look at it as like a series of technological tools and their impact on the environment, like, gosh, it's only been like 50 or 100 years that it's like really been this culture of petroleum-based internal combustion engines getting people around. Maybe the market is helping a little bit. I don't want to be like anti-capitalist as like a stance, because we're in a capitalist society, unfortunately. I'm like as anarchist as I want to be. We have this consumption and production structure. So how do you steer it? How do you make it cool?
Right.
To not do the bad.
That's the thing, is it's like always you have to make it like fit with the profit incentive under capitalism, and like maybe it's the case that these overlapping ideas can be made to be a circle, like what human beings need and what you can make profitable, but it feels hard for certain parts of it, so it's like a lot of you're talking kind of about like religion and like spirituality in general, like these ideas of philosophy and stuff are useful, but a lot of times just like kind of unprovable, like, right? Like, and it's not about kind of like whether or not it's true or real, or if there is a material reality or any of that stuff, but kind of like how that impacts society and how that makes us be able to operate as a society and continue existing as a species. And I think a lot of the things, like, it's like if you look at like China, like they're also extractive society. It's not capitalism, but it is very authoritarian, and you have a lot of these similar ideas about like doomerism, like fear that the world's ending. I think it's just because it's also extractive. Like it's not the consumption is not like ending up back in. It doesn't create a circle, right? It's just like you're dumping into landfills and you're burning petroleum, taking it from the earth, and it just goes into the atmosphere and heats the world. And that is kind of feels like the thing we need to connect is like just exist sustainably with our society, and a lot of these problems would be solved or at least made better.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about like other limited natural resources that were used for technology purposes, like lighting.
Lithium.
Sure, I mean lithium's a really interesting, but I'm thinking like whale oil,
Yeah.
or like these things that were super valuable and built economies actually, and sort of have transitioned from. And maybe we're transitioning to lithium and polymers, and like, wow, that's terrible too. It's all right. Maybe we could figure out a different. But especially concerning like China, right? I mean, like there's really bad environmental consequences. Like beautiful countryside that's being just devastated. It's like it doesn't matter to the other side of the world.
It's still extractive.
And it's still the environmental. It's one world, and you could kind of care about it, right? Even if it's not right here, you know what I mean? Like you care about the Amazon, right? Even though it's not right here, right? So I feel like there is like us versus them kind of, and you talk about it, like there's like one of capitalism's great strengths is to sort of polarize, right? And say, be one, us, and by doing this, whatever that, drive a Ford. Whatever, and signify that you're this. And you were talking about like semiotics. We were talking about symbolism and the sort of idea of in the email or the text that you sent about what was the. I'm sorry, I'm going to pull out my phone for a second.
Oh, sure.
So you had a great prompt that I was thinking about on the way here. You said. The event theme is randomness and structuralism. Digital algorithms, possibility of making accidental natural phenomenon, and questions on current society direction, which is made by existentialism or structuralism. So think about like that idea of like structuralism and the symbolic nature of things, and like how everything is a symbol. What car you drive, how you dress, the way you present, the way you sound. All these things are sort of symbols of like who you are. And by valuing certain environmentally extractive things, right, you're symbolizing something. And what that thing is right now, I'm thinking about the polarization of politics that keep it going, whether it's here or in Brazil with Bolsonaro. There's a sort of like real intense thing that's happening with identity and need to continue a certain way of existing, that perpetuates the environmental crisis that we find ourselves in the world. So that's what I was thinking about with this whole thing, and like how do we as artists consider that and respond to this? I think Mike's work is actually interesting, like choral.
It's actually
super
it's
symbolic.
interesting because like I didn't think about this coming into this talk, but the inspiration around a lot of the work generally is, and Tommy and I both grew up in a similar area out on Long Island, and I pull a lot of inspiration from that because of the darker aspects of it. Like a lot of family worked for Grumman, which is like military industrial, and they left behind like a ton of waste on Long Island, and there's so much cancer rates there and things, and so it's kind of like, again, it's not like directly in relation to the communicating this work or anything, but definitely takes inspiration from that. One story I read recently where scientists found like essentially microplastics merged in some way atomically to like sediment, and it's like as of right now we can't like separate the two. So it's kind of like our waste has become like one with the earth and natural organic resources, and specifically like this is like a local thing but also a global thing, and so the work is not necessarily the product of it, but it's definitely inspired by that darker side of like where I grew up for sure.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that percolating sort of fluids into the aquifer. Long Island really is like a big sandbar. It has a tiny little bit of fresh water in the middle that used to be really great. And I don't know if your town has town water now, but like they have to filter everybody's water, and they're worried. All sorts of strange things that we've witnessed this generation. How do you respond to that generation? How does the next generation respond to our response? Is another interesting thing, right? The symbolic things that we create are either embraced or rejected, right? Or maybe we don't create, we just point to, and say, hey, here's something that's worth, thinking about, and, sailboats.
Yeah, wind energy
Sure.
from the bygone era.
Yeah, right? Like Don Quixote and like tilting out a windmill. There's certain things that you can sort of like evoke. So I was just reading Regarding the Pain of Others by Susan Sontag. She wrote it 20 years ago now. I didn't know she wrote anything that late in life. But so it's a really interesting book where she recommended. It's actually an easy read for her writing. And she has a couple of points that she's making, sort of about our relationship sort of to images and photographs, and that's sort of her real sort of area of interest that I'm interested in too, and so and this idea that we have memory is most strongly formed by a photograph is one of the things she states in the book, and makes evident, sort of makes a good argument for it. And I thought that's kind of profound. That like with all of the different sort of ways that we have images flowing at us in connections at this point between different video and audio, photographs are still this thing that are kind of able to evoke memory in a moment, but also replace memory. And so that's all you remember is to just think about the photographic representation of the video. So this idea, like the strength of the image, the single image right now, is still like really potent in our moment. And as artists, that's sort of one of the things that we're often working with, is this sort of idea of an image. So anyway, I think it's an interesting thing to bring up.
Yeah, that kind of feel like ties into like the whole Hegel thing. Like phenomenology is like you're seeing an image, but you're kind of like in your own like perception of the world and how you're building like a model of the space that like if it's a photograph, you're looking at it and you're also thinking about like perspective of how the image is captured and like transporting yourself physically to that space, and that is sort of also a very like memory evoking thing, and that's like just senses in general. Like some people are blind and like they probably have that, especially like smell in particular is very like transportative and memory evoking.
So my question then is, how does that apply now, this sort of interconnected moment? What's the smell of digital interconnectedness? What's that sort of perception jump that we're making in this structuralist moment that we're talking about? I have to take my cue card out of here. Anyway, I think it's really fascinating. So, I also think that DigiAna, has been presenting interesting answers, from a variety of approaches, within this moment. So,
I mean, like,
It's like when you talk about like symbol, right? Symbolization, what is it? The symbol something like
so there's like semiotics, right? And they're all talking about
Everything's
as
a
well.
sign.
Right, everything, right. A symbol or a sign.
I mean, like
A symbol is a type of sign, and there's a type different signs.
like
There's a
where?
sign and a signifier, and there's the three thing. There's all sorts of wonderful ways of trying to put your arms around it.
Yeah.
There's like the idea in AI too, like whether or not our brains are symbolic systems or whether or not they're this kind of neural network that we think about as it's like a discrete system of like back propagation and nonlinear interactions where things are like encoded and it kind of seems like maybe it's both.
Yeah.
It's the kind of the more boring answer. 'Cause,
Or we don't really know.
we don't know, but like,
Yeah.
at least from the way that like these new AI systems are coming out and kind of like representing the world and showing us how they represent the world, it seems like they're accurately encoding, more and more accurately encoding the world, but only in the ways that we tell it to. So it's really just kind of like capturing the input we give it.
I also think though, to like kind of argue that point, it's like I understand that where that's coming from, but also I feel like we culturally always take something that's the modern day technology and apply it. It's like, oh, suddenly Siemens, and that's like how people's bodies work or something.
Clockwork, right?
Right. So I think at least with the work that I'm trying to do here, it's like some non-entities that could be the possible, like to Seungjin's like initial idea. It's like in the future, maybe it's not humanity even, and maybe AI is not just a digital interface, but it's like some hybrid biological digital being of some kind.
Especially if you think about future technology being some sort of DNA-based storage
Yeah,
or
that's
all sorts
interesting.
of biological,
That's
technological, that's not having to do with us even. What comes in
Like we can't even imagine what that is to make that case
Right.
100 years from now or something.
No.
Yeah.
Like what would it? What would 7 petabytes of storage look
Right,
like
right,
with
right.
DNA storage or whatever?
Yeah.
And I know definitely there's like things happening that are interesting, and one thing with the title, this is just biohybrid, which is like, from what I understand, simply, is that like scientists taking cellular biological material and actually embedding them with nanoelectronics. And I think it's interesting because like at the same time there's like this bright side and the dark side of everything, right? It's like it's very similar to what I was saying about the rocks being embedded with microplastics.
Yeah.
We're intentionally doing it, something like embedding electronics into cells for the benefit of humans, I guess. I mean, it's interesting.
I took a class at this place called Gen Space that was just like an intro into DNA and everything, and the way that people talk about like biotechnology is like they personify things a lot. They talk about like RNA going and doing its thing as if it has intention and like agency and personality, but it's really just like these mechanisms of chemicals interacting. And I think that it's hard for us to kind of extrapolate, like to take out any particular part of ourselves or society or our cells from the systems that they exist in. And when we think about technology, it's like the same, right? Like we're transhumanism, we're kind of like merging with these things and becoming something else.
Singularity, man.
Yeah, the Evangelion, like everybody's just gonna upload their brains to the cloud, merge into the primordial goo. Yeah. But I think that that's kind of the way that we should be thinking about things. It's like we're part of this kind of like global organism, right? And how do we keep being that global organism? I think the like billionaires like answer to climate change is we just leave, right? But I think that is, you're creating a new species, right? Like we stop being humans if we leave this planet. We can't really be humans without existing as like Gaia or whatever.
Or fixing it with like more technology.
Yeah, and like technology is kind of like
technology.
going the other way. You're trying to escape into this other world, and it's like you stop being human, but what do you become?
So it's also like related about what is the meaning of the human.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like, have you ever seen the Ghost in the Shell in the like movie? And those like they have a movie series. The first one is Ghost in the Shell, and next one is what's that? The insomnia. Anyway, the next one is they talk about what's the difference between dog and the human. You know, like they have like same structure. The only difference is like which one have a like soul or spiritual system. And nowadays people are talking about like quantumism, you know, like technology, like quantumism, like phenomenon. Some scientists talk about like it's like phenomenon or result is changed by people's like minds.
Perception.
Yeah. It's a, like psychic, right?
Yeah. Biocentrism.
Yeah, right. So, like, it's mean even like in the future, people can like control about the spiritual system in the like quantumism system maybe program, and they're gonna put out also like material or control. So it means if they define this is a human, and if they put the like take out the body system from this system, this body system is just a body or door. It's not human, and it means it's gonna be like like changes to what is the human like meaning in the future.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting topic too is like the kind of idea that like AI doesn't really exist without us, right? Like it isn't kind of an autonomous thing, like you can't, I mean, I guess you could theoretically make it to where it's like the gray goo of like it consumes things and it like has rational, like internal, like continuous feedback loop, but like that doesn't really, like we still need to run the servers in order for these things to go. It's pretty much just like one directional. It's not a loop. It doesn't have agency. So it doesn't, most of the time it doesn't exist without the context of someone feeding it something and it also being like computations that are happening on a server somewhere. So I think that's kind of a big part of why a lot of these systems don't have sort of like a personality, or like they kind of are soulless, so to speak, is the big complaint about a lot of the kind of like the like stable diffusion images that are created. They lack that kind of like personal like context and like style. I think that's a big part of why it's not that reasonable to consider these things human, but rather our interaction with them is creating a new thing and making that a new organism, rather than it be like AI is its own thing, it's independent, it's gonna rule us or whatever, but our relationship with AI is that we're kind of merged, whether we understand that or not. Just like a kind of a tool, like when you use a tool, you kind of become something else.
Yeah, it's like a knife, like you can kill the people or you can just can use as a coup,
Yeah.
It's up to how we control or otherwise they won't kill us.
Even if like humanity does make it autonomous and like its own kind of self-contained thing, it still exists in the context of where we did that and it's interacting with us, and we don't really have anything outside of our perception of reality, and kind of just have to accept that for what it is and understand that you're part of it.
Right.
I'm trying to remember the name of the book. There's this, I think Neil Stevenson wrote a book about.
By the way, please bring some of your recommendation book in
Okay.
here.
Sure.
Like today I bring like 3
Yeah, those
books,
are good.
like media studies
Those are
is
good.
recommendation book,
Which
and
one
the media side, art and physics. There are some really good, or niche stories.
Yeah, it's fun. It's not by an artist, but it's fun.
Yeah, it's
about
fun.
art
It's
and
fun.
science and sort of
Yeah, like
overlapping.
Yeah.
Da Vinci,
Yeah.
Mane,
physics and Einstein,
even Egyptian. Anyway, yeah, like, I'm also trying to make this space also kind of that kind of like information zero, like library. I don't know. Like, yeah.
I know it's interesting to talk to you guys, like to have this conversation, because the more we're like talking about it and kind of associating it with the work that I've presented, it's like, oh yeah, it kind of pulled in a lot of this stuff. Because actually, I was reading a lot about biocentrism. I had like a book on that. Lots of like quantum physics. It's so interesting.
Yeah, kind of rationalizing and finding philosophies to understand the experimental results that we're seeing in quantum mechanics. And
It's what I really like and take from those things is I come from the world where I like work with engineers and things, and I am not like I try not to be like black and white about things, and I feel like we still don't know anything. I like to keep that like really.
yeah,
And keep a really open mind about things. Like what I was going back to like the thing with AI, and like not to discount what you said, just to argue it, take it from my point of view, or just like try not to, like just try to keep an open mind, and like have a bigger understanding of things and like learn. Because especially with quantum physics, right? It's like still is like an interesting experiment where shine light through a pinhole or whatever, and like the photons either hit it or like go a different direction, and it's
pick up the two-slit.
I'm probably explaining this incorrectly, but
it's either a wave or it's a particle.
A wave or a particle,
right?
I think it's so interesting because it's like based on somebody witnessing it or not, which is so weird, but like that's the kind of thing I love.
Yeah.
It's like. Maybe you can't even maybe we won't even ever be able to grasp, even with the most powerful AI ever that we create as like humanity.
Well,
you may still never have any understanding of the universe, which I think that's pretty.
It's really interesting. We keep going deeper and deeper. It keeps spinning more and more, like string theory and all these other kind of concepts that try to unify our reality. And
I like that the antithesis of that. It's you will not be able to, no matter how hard you try.
But it's like
engineer your way out of everything.
In math, there's this idea of like Gödel's theorem, where it's like a system is not like you can't prove the soundness of a system from within the system itself. You need an outside system to do it. So like maybe we're in this simulation, for lack of a better word, and there's no way to prove that. And that's kind of what goes into that. The spiritualism is it's like inherently unprovable, so it's more about like the here and now and the existence of it and like society and how that makes us organize society and the value of our beliefs and the world that it creates. Really, that's the way I think about it, but it is, especially with kind of science and the physical reality of the world is sometimes hard to unify and make your spiritual beliefs work with your kind of like quantifiable, peer-reviewed evidence. It is a really fun and interesting topic, though. I think a lot of it is like, in my mind, like chaos. The idea of like a mathematical chaotic system is one where the changes to the input are disproportional to the changes of the output. Right, so it's that's kind of like in computers, for example, it's like pseudo randomness they're not true randomness because you're just kind of creating this
one of the
complex.
first conversations Seungjin and I had based on like, how are you actually, how can it be really random?
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, there's lots of theories, and then the theories turn into like functionality. And,
right. Yeah. It's like the early philosophy ideas of like the mechanical universe, where it's like, how can free will exist if you're kind of could be like if you knew the original state of the universe, you calculate everything, but it's like the idea of chaos and like these feedback systems and like non-linear interactions is that it's like, oh yeah, we actually kind of can't calculate things past a certain point.
I will say that too, to like bring it back to more like just the material, like hands-on type of art making, like to make the connection. I do like, I wanted to take things out of the box and off the screen and make physical things, because even even if you've like programmed things with, you know, sending electrical pulses, semi-random in some way, I think the physical materials, like at the end of the day, there might be some push to go back to like just painting, because the interactions are like so, you know, like a Jackson Pollock piece. It's
Right.
like a human material connection, and like that, what could be more random
Yeah.
or more like human than that?
The physical world has a lot more variables. And
And I like that kind of mix between like, well, maybe there is something to be said about like the physical and the digital, like you know, adding in some programmatic thing, but then
Yeah.
the way things can move onto each other or move within a 3D space,
that's a
3D
big
physical
reason
space.
I like the live coding thing, is like the performance aspect of it is just like improvisational. It's like I am the product of all the inputs coming into me, and I'm kind of distilling that and having a conversation with the computer, so it feels more organic and kind of like real and relatable in a way. It's like kind of just creating this feedback loop and a connection with the audience and people, like physically perceiving and existing and impacting it.
It's like a live performance chef, you know, like cooking.
Yeah,
yeah, right.
Yeah, like sort of cook for, you know, audience. Yeah. It's like this is maybe other story, but like I'm just think, you know, there is the basically two different sides of like what world looks like. I mean, this is a little bit weird story, but for example, like there's two ways. Like one is we know something is the world, and other word is we don't know. Like is the world. I mean, so even today's conversation, like conversation, something talk about digital and analog, and show something also like symbol or like something like material, and like other people can see, like feel, and put some opinion, and like just throw their, you know, like opinion, like catch and release like a sport, you know, like I think today's conversation and like is like a sport, you know, like digital thing. And we are like doing is like what is the zero and what is the one, what is the zero and what is the one. It's like a programming system, I think. But in our future system is the like if quantum system, like they more sort about the more like nanotechnology inside like phenomena. They already proved is like most like nowadays scientist thing is there's no 0 and 1. You know, as you know, like quantum system is like just rolling. You know, like there's not 0 and 1. It's the like same position always there. So there's not like all like they never show their like result until people see their result, right? There's a quantum, and even there's something even like symbol and materials in the new shape. You know, like symbol is people say there's a, like dots and like line system, and like if there's some dots is there, it's always it's like a magnet. You know, like it's like 0 or 1, 0 or 1, 0 or 1. It's a, you know, I cannot say the like English like magnets they have a S and N, right? Yeah, right. So we like every material is basically is made by the atom, right? And atom they like surround these to like electrons, right? And electrons system have a like magnet system. They have a plus and minus and S and N. And what is the like our shape like laptop, like for example like square shape, they have like electronic system is like if there is a plus, they supposed to be here is minus. And they're supposed to be here plus and they're supposed to be minus. But sometimes like, in quantum system, people like found there's a triangle system in the symbols, but it's not never happened in the like this electronic system, because if you make a triangle system, if there is a plus and if there is a minus, it's supposed to cross, but it's not happen. So it's the quantum system. They always surround it. Like so, then it's the material, but it's still there is no material. So it's like a magic thing, you know. So, but you know, So people even say, our like future society is gonna be really not can expect about our physical thing or what's the digital, even our like time dimension, our mind, because even people say there's a lot of time dimension thing. What is the parallel
multiverse theory.
Yeah, like theory, and even like people gonna not dead, like in like eternally, because even if people are dead and dead spiritual, if they move by the like a quantum system, it's throw away in the like whole universe and hijack other people's like body or other materials.
It's like silly as they are and like kind of overdone, like the Marvel Universe's kind of like idea of the multiverse and like what wars look like, and that is really like interesting to think about in terms of these kind of thought experiments of parallel worlds and trying to think about the idea that like every single, I guess, chemical interaction that happens has like multiple outcomes like on a quantum level. So like every single possible reality could exist, and that you can travel, the idea that you can travel between them, or like everything everywhere all at once. These kind of like science fiction explorations of these ideas, they're really interesting and like fun thought experiments. But I feel like it's at a certain point it gets so far from kind of influencing like your day-to-day, right? And to me that feels like what matters the most is like how your beliefs about the quantum reality of your existing in this kind of like infinite, everything you can imagine exists, but what does that mean when I have to wake up and go to my job? And so it's, if you can kind of unify it with other beliefs that shape your kind of worldview and communicate those beliefs to other people, then you can shape your reality and then actually have a tangible benefit.
Right. So yeah, I think like even today's conversation and like this kind of like art format, like exhibition, it's gonna be for us the human, like something live thing. It's a really old history, like it's like martial art, isn't it?
Totally.
Yeah. But still nowadays people doing like practice martial arts. Even like why people still practice martial art? It's not working nowadays. Like you can shout to just go to people. Why trying to like practice martial art like a Bruce Lee? Because they just want to see in the the like beauty in their concept inside, like So I think even like conversation with the people, like meet people, also like using body system or showing like exhibition and like trying to like show like randomness, what is the like digital thing to like other people. It's really like martial like art.
Yeah, it's like culture holds memory and like kind of like continues these ideas and like ancient people, like why they make a pyramid, or even like ancient like Roman people, why they kill each other in the Colosseum room. We cannot do normal anymore like here, right? It's illegal to kill people, but like ancient people is a normal thing. It's like a sport. So every different era they have like humanism, they have own specialty about the creations. So I think just this is literally like out from today's like conversation for like thing, but I just like have an idea about it.
I think it's interesting, and I feel like with art and music, for me, it's become more of like, I'm not very religious, but it's like more just to do it. Like I don't even care anymore. It's not a status thing or anything. It's just like to do it and like the way it makes you feel and to communicate. Like it's like almost like it's cheesy to say, but it's like a gift to be able to like communicate, especially music in particular, and sound. It's like so abstract, and you don't need to sit and explain it. Yeah,
They're like complex ideas that you're able to get out that like you wouldn't be able to in other kind of mediums. And
yeah, I mean, to me, it's like the most important medium, but because there's no reason to explain why a song touches you in a certain way. I think that's really interesting, and again, back to that same thing that is like a core of one of my beliefs is that you don't need to think, you don't need to understand it, and I think that's instead of you don't explain every single thing, and it makes it like more magical that way.
Yeah, I think the way that anthropologists look at things is fun to apply to humanity is like these things just are and like can be like just kind of an emergent property of us. Is like we create art and we have a culture and that serves a purpose in society in terms of like being able to pass down oral histories or like kind of rationalize and reason about the world that we live in and the changes we're seeing, and that is like anthropologically serves a purpose, so it doesn't really need to serve a purpose for you or like
or your head would just explode.
Right. It's like if you actually understood everything in order to.
I think something maybe in some next Salon we should talk about what is the good art, like what is the meaning about art, nowadays, like
yeah, it's a little more like
it's
about
another topic, but
yeah.
what is our new good balance with the like creation, like life in our human society.
There's definitely a good subtopic in there. It's like kind of touching on what we talked about a little bit. It's like how AI is or isn't creative, right? And like kind of the randomness of that, and like what creativity is in terms of. It's like
is it just patterns?
Is it randomness, or is it like you are a product of all the inputs that you're taking in and everything, the context of everything that's happened to you, and so you create and express that, and that's what makes art unique and beautiful. And, but for AI, it's like they're just kind of a product of everything. Just like give them all this certain data set of stuff, and then hit it with a random number, and that just outputs it. It's not doesn't really have that context or personality.
Also, I don't think that really considers some other things we don't know, which is like what you carry through generations of your family and stuff, like past
Epigenetics and
like past
generational trauma,
experiences, trauma, all those things that have never even happened to you, and like maybe you're communicating that in some way through what you are actively pursuing.
Absolutely.
Can I ask also like who have already son and daughter or father, like how do you think, what is the real difference, like that those people's generation and your generation is the like kind of, I don't know, like as your
I think
father.
I have a very limited lens on this through my one experience in the city. Here in New York, as a parent, it might be different in a lot of places. But I do think that they feel very connected to their friends and are ready at every moment to use the phone to see what somebody was saying recently and respond to it immediately if possible. So there's this immediacy of the moment that persists. And they're able to spend all day in that moment, which is kind of horrifying to me because I don't see the art there. You know what I mean? Like maybe there is, maybe I don't get it. Like I don't like.
You're old,
I'm old. Put me out by the river with my accordion and I'm happy.
Bring it out to the mountain, or is that folklore?
Well, I mean that's where they are now. They're finding that too.
Yeah.
But I do think this generation has a very high level of comfort with just having a screen there, and maybe even. I'm not talking about my own children, but I, as a professor, I see many of my students holding their phone physically in their hand, all class. Sometimes a few of them have headphones in and like are watching anime, half watching, You know, just because they need it on the sensory.
Yeah, the ADHD
Yeah.
kind of like.
Yeah. And they're too. Some of them are better students, actually, you know, than in class. There's some of the good. So I'm not saying, hey, don't do that. But there's like a whole generational thing right now that I think, with this, you know, kind of onslaught of technology that's sort of just permeating us, like we've changed, absolutely.
Yeah.
Even if it's not in us cellularly, it's in us mentally and emotionally, you know. And I think one of the things I am nervous about is like I get joy from making stuff physically, you know, and I understand that some people get joy from making stuff digitally. I do too, right? And then where does it go from there? Where does that joy, that sense of like excitement, that genuine excitement from something you're doing? You know, that's not solving a puzzle or playing, you know,
Interacting.
you know, rock, paper, scissors or something is fun. That's great too. Nothing wrong with games. Games are great. And you bring up games. I'm all for, you know, the games. I don't know.
There's something like deeper.
That's a long digression or a question. I'm sorry.
No, it's a question of like, is it being driven, like this desire to kind of like, there's the community aspect, right? Humans want to interact with each other.
Always,
But it's also like, is that the desire to escape into the phone, kind of the upload to the cloud idea? Or is it the Instagram, like gamification of like commodification of your attention pulling you into that?
And the scientific methodology of, you know, continuing people's engagement is so effective at this point that, you know, you give a kid TikTok and they're going to be on for the whole day.
Right.
You know,
It's
it's
like
like tell them to go to the bathroom because they forget. You know, it's great.
You lose your physical needs.
Yeah, and that's what, you know, I'm not going to say like, yeah, stick a catheter in me and just hook me up to the screen, you know.
Human batteries.
Yeah, bad example. But, you know, I am not thinking it's going to happen. But, you know, you can imagine how, you know, you just give somebody a good enough headset, you know, and you get so used to the interface, whether it's pinching and pushing or whatever it is that, you know, Apple's going to get us doing.
It becomes an extension.
Put the catheter in,
Yeah.
you know, put a little feeding thing in somewhere, and you just sit there all the time, right? And you're lazy boy.
I know, and it's scary. It's very true.
What was it, Ready Player One? That was sort of in that direction. I never saw that movie, but the book actually kind of described that dystopian potential future. But honestly, I think, and judging from my kids, they're really into even more physically being with other people. The digital is no substitute for the physical, and they want to go hang out somewhere.
Well, I gotta say, even I feel like I've been so immersed in digital for the past like decade that I want to take it out of that and make physical things because there's something different about that. Especially coming out of like pandemic and everything, like it's like overload, it's too much.
Right.
And there's something like more human. And even the paint, like honestly, I think maybe the next project will just be painted. Like
And
everything's like
still there.
like some of Seungjin's work, like actually when we spoke about that piece about the glitch work, I thought like, oh, maybe it's algorithmic in some way or laser cut or something, but I like this so much because it's not, it's just like by hand, but it takes like inspiration from that. I mean, I'm speaking for your work, so please. But I mean, to me, that's what I get from it. It's interesting because it's like, no, this is a painted, like, handcrafted piece.
My wife really hates it. She always says, this just looks disgusting. So it's like, I'm not perfect, it's more, you should do or like more machinery perfectly.
But it's, to me, it's like there's more to it, like that I get from it as a viewer, that, especially when you explain it a little bit further too.
Yeah.
And then it's like there's more to it than just
It's an
like,
irony, you know, if you take that photo and post Instagram, this looks perfect. But if you see the personally, you can notice, oh, this is like really
Yeah,
that's
right.
great.
I feel like a big part of the glitch aesthetic is like embracing mistakes, or like there are no mistakes. That's kind of like what makes things human, right? And it's like misusing things on purpose and sort of like doing things algorithmically yourself as a human and not like having those things emerge out of it is like, it's the Bob Ross idea of like happy mistakes. I mean, there's like kind of
Happy
a,
mistake, it sounds great.
Yeah, I mean, I think I try to like find a middle ground of that too, because I even do the same thing. It's like something that's manufactured for, you know, with like an intention, but I also like the idea of completely taking it out of that realm at all. And it's like you're just doing things by hand. And maybe to your point, Tommy, it's like future generations will, maybe not the larger percent, but some percentage of people will find that like there's actually no amount of artificial intelligence or quantum technology that we can do to possibly recreate somebody like splashing paint on a canvas on the floor or something. Like that would be
getting outside in nature and like touching grass.
The smell of garlic cooking.
right. Yeah, I mean it's like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, seriously. I mean it sounds silly, but I think it's there's something to that. Maybe we don't see it now, but in like 150 years or longer we will, right?
But you know, I do think we're seeing it now because I do think we've hit this moment where like writers strike, actors strike, whatever. People still want to go to the movies. Like I went to the movies.
It's an experience.
And
Yeah, let's see the 35th Marvel multiverse.
not even that. I went to see a movie like a lighthearted comedy.
Yeah.
And I was like, let's go see what's in the
There's something to be said, like, it's a big part of it is definitely the more immersive nature of it. It's like a big screen, you don't have that at home, the sound system that's like better than what you have at home, but also the community aspect, people reacting to it.
Exactly.
Also popcorn.
Well, like the ritualistic aspect of that too is.
So here's something interesting, and something you could comment on as well. I saw a movie called Joyride, which is, it's a great movie, go see it, it's really funny. It's, the story is a Chinese American girl who actually turns out to be Korean, adopted by a white family, and her best friend who's Chinese American.
Oh, recent?
Yeah, it's out right now.
yeah.
And they go to China to like close a business deal, but end up trying to meet the woman's birth mother who's adopted. It's wonderful, heartwarming, funny story. What was really interesting to me were these cultural responses from the audience when like the woman who was Chinese or Korean but raised by Americans was like talking to old people in certain very intimate ways, and the old people like when said things like, "Are we gonna have sex next?" and then like in Chinese or whatever, and the audience laughs, but then like she touches the guy, and then like everybody really laughs in the audience because that's some signifier that I didn't know. It's like, oh, what's the cultural community of like touching or whatever? These cultures, these different things. Like, do you look at people in the eye or not? Are you formality? These sorts of things are like in the context of the movie theater. Right. I'd be like, okay, so whatever. I was like, that was it. That's what happened. It's really interesting. So I do think
That's a good point, yeah.
musical theater and plays even, like there's a whole thing that's going on there that you don't get.
Kind of become a part of this thing and are able to have more empathy and connect with the work better because
I hope so.
there's things you miss out on.
Or like quality too, it's another thing. Just like I mean, I'm speaking from like Western culture, but it's like quality of things just doesn't really matter. Like you can have an AI just generate a million Marvel movies, like the script, the actors' faces, and like everything, and people still pay for it.
Would they though, or would we get bored? Like here's one of my questions that I was
a big question, right?
Discussing like, so I have my opinions on the different interest level that I'm finding myself with glitch art, right? And algorithmic or generative art, and then AI. And I still find these sort of programmatic, they're programmatic artworks to be more interesting still. And the AI thing is just like, all right, it was wow, that was a candy high at first, and then I'm like, it's
true,
more, and it's flooded like the NFT market, which was a place where I was seeing a lot of interesting art.
Like how many monkeys can you
Well, how many of the sort of smooth face with a beautiful light, and then like, never have a perfect rendered background.
Well, I've heard interesting talks about this too, where people are like, there'll be some end of the internet, right, where it's like it's ingested all the data sets, all the data it can in data sets that are like super large, and then once it starts recreating, forever and ever, it's just the same thing forever.
Like, kind of.
Unless, like, the theory about like emergent properties is interesting, then okay, maybe it starts creating on its own. That's like a whole other point. But right now, what you see, like to Tommy's point, is like you just see the same stuff, like just kind of a collage of different things. Whereas still, there's something about humanity where people have like filmmakers you love, like maybe they're inspired by like 50 different people that are like really recognizable, and you can kind of see it in their work, but it's like they have their aesthetic, and that's like, I know, again, it's a little cheesy, but I strive for that myself, like just to have my own aesthetic at least, that it's like people can tell, even if it sounds related to music, like visual interaction, like whatever it is, like it is my thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's a human story.
Yeah.
You can connect with it and like
and just
find
like
meaning
you
in
can
it.
just see too, like, oh, that is so and so, and that's their work, and I can tell, and it like evokes an emotion. Whereas I've yet to have that come from a purely digital, like AI generated thing.
Some people are doing things that are clearly their style in AI at this point. Like, oh, that's a blah blah blah. I don't know the people at this point really, but I'm like, oh, I've seen Kika Nikola's work or whoever, that I keep seeing on the blockchain show up as like selling at a certain level all the time. Whatever. There's aesthetics that are being being very personalized somehow. They're still boring. Like it's still clearly AI. And their take is like always blue and moody, or there's always the mustache guy, or there's always like it becomes like a caricature kind of thing.
Yeah, and I like the idea of like creating your own data sets, but I think as far as I understand, and like from what I see, it's still you would need so much of your own data, like years, thousands of years worth of your own.
I have 250,000 pictures on my cardboard right now.
Right, I mean, maybe it'd be interesting to see if you just made your own, like,
what that would look like.
Your own algorithm to generate Tommy's.
Kind of finding spaces in between those pictures that might be something new or
be interesting
to
witness. And I poo-poo AI art all the time, and I'll continue to. But there's exceptions that are good. One of them was Rafiq Anadol at MoMA. He had this gigantic screen that was hypnotic, and showed this very AI obviously made like liquid motion form splashing around.
That's like one of those
like the pink thing that's like that's more. I feel like maybe less AI and more just kind of like computational.
But then too, even with that, actually, I mean, to me personally, it's like if I saw his other work, I'd be like, is that this guy? 'Cause it seems like it doesn't like really have a viewpoint, really. Like,
well,
there's a lot to
like
talk about, but there's not like, emotionally, like this is I get something from this guy.
And that's kind of gets into the idea of like abstract art, right? And it's like whether or not that has meaning or meaning that you can objectively get from just consuming it versus the meaning you get from it, like conceptually and contextually, and like who the artist is, what they're thinking, what you were thinking when you observed it. Like that's kind of what meaning is built out of. And like I think that what you're saying about like kind of AI, kind of you can use it. It's a tool, and you can make things that feel like they have like personality and soul if you really put work into it. But the idea of automating artists away, I think, is just ridiculous. And like being able to kind of generatively create these things it's like, it's always going to be kind of mass appeal, generalized because you showed it a data set of everything, right? You didn't specialize it to have like a context or kind of like have a specific purpose and meaning. You just kind of wrote some words to target some space of this high dimensionality. And that kind of strips things from their context and is limited in what has been represented before. versus what you as a human can represent because of your own
Right.
context.
So there is no imagination, actually.
Yeah.
And you,
Like
And we can't explain it.
yeah.
it's
There's
interesting.
no like reason to explain it, I feel like. Yeah.
Like even every time I make that kind of like artwork or my like, other like series of like painting, I always try to almost make pure like almost like 100% like basic digital algorithm system. I want to use it, but every time even I try to 100% digitalize, always like at least 1% always myself or humanization is included. Like like a really pure, good, dripping, roast coffee, some like really taste. I think there is a maker like artwork, something like something tasty. I think, yeah. So
I think even a lot of what we talked about too, like me coming into this show was challenge my views on my own work even, actually, like to produce something that is like away from that idea. Because well, actually this like print here and a few others like on the screen and stuff, they have that, like they're not AI, but they kind of have this sort of like rule-based thing and something will happen, but I want to like pull it so much further and into more like physical or like what Seungjin is saying, like some higher percentage of it being more like my own essence in it rather than like the rule-based thing.
Yeah. I think there's something to be said about kind of like finding, like being surprised by things when you're creating.
That's
like
true.
the process
I like
of,
that. Yeah.
and like it kind of becomes like curational in a way.
Right.
But yeah, there's a balance in that, like where AI, it's like feels like it's actually intentionally like sucking the personality of something, so it becomes harder to find something that you're curating that is actually you or representational of you versus like kind of designing something and like finding these surprising and unexpected elements to it and being like, this is what represents what I want to say about the world or what I'm trying to say with my art.
We communicate.
Yeah.
we did almost 100. Sorry, 1 hours and 30 minutes.
It is almost 100 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, 100 minutes. Do you want something?
Should we wrap it up? Have a concluding idea you wanna?
Yeah, like you're the like main artist.
Yeah, well, I think, like I just mentioned, talking about like having these kind of points and theories to like speak to the work and like the kind of the collective, like what are the kind of ideas we're trying to convey and things. Like with my work in particular, I think this is really helpful because you could work in a vacuum by yourself and be like all in on your own ideas and things. But like when I met Tommy and Seungjin, it's like really challenged my own ideas about my work and like what being given the space for the month has allowed me to like explore different, or maybe not different, but more like push more and pull out more of like like my own aesthetic and my own like essence, like I said, in my own work. So that's been really amazing, and it's like you can't get that without like just again being in a vacuum or just doing it on your own. So
Well, that's that
Yeah,
connection,
appreciate
that
Yeah.
communication you're talking about, happens when somebody views the work and then
right.
maybe even talks to you about it and complete the circle. Right?
Yeah, and then
That's
even like
all
it
ours.
opens, like having the opening reception, having people come in and like comment on it. It's like always, if it's quick, people pop in and out and have something quick to say about it. But I got like really good reception and like people were really interested to talk about it. I mean, it was nice. Yeah, it was really good to like get people how they like are affected by it, because it's hard when you're like making things and it makes you feel a certain way, but then to have other people be affected by it is like a whole nother amazing scenario that you just can't recreate. Like, I feel lucky to be able to show, and I typically just perform, and that's like basically just like, you know, unless you're with a small group of people performing, or if you're by yourself, the audience is just like kind of a separate entity. Whereas this, it kind of felt more communal.
You can't easily talk to your audience while you're performing.
Right.
Unless like standing or something.
Right.
It's just kind of the vibe that you
Yeah. Did you like that one, or do you want me to do it differently?
Yeah.
But and not to say that it really changes what I'm going to do
Right.
to that great an extent, but it challenged my ideas at least, and I like that a lot. Like, you just can't, like I said, you just can't recreate that in any sense, like purely digitally, like social networks and stuff. Like, as much as I like that for connecting, it's good to connect with humans.
Do it in
So,
person.
Yeah,
Has that community aspect.
yeah, or just showing up and meeting people. I mean, it's awesome to do that. Like, I feel like throughout COVID too, it was just like I lost that, and it really changes your perspective on things. So.
Sometimes you don't know the value of something until you lose it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, holy cow.
Yeah,
Took it for
absolutely.
granted.
Yeah. That's my takeaway.
Yeah.
That's my big takeaway. It's actually not so much about the work, but more about like the experience. Really. Yeah.
Cool.
So thank you again.
No,
Really.
thank you so much. Thank you so much
Great.
for joining today's conversation. All right.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Let's see.